Tengo el agrado de invitar al escenario al señor Christian Portman, de Cost Internacional. El señor Portman es licenciado en Teoría Macroeconómica, Economía y Negocios de la Universidad de Groningen, Países Bajos. Igualmente es máster cum laude en Desarrollo y Macroeconomía. Profesionalmente se ha destacado por más de 35 años en puestos como director de programas globales de transparencia internacional, gestionando y orientando el programa de las prioridades globales de transparencia internacional en su lucha contra la corrupción. Vicepresidente regional para Oriente Medio y el Norte de África en Banco Mundial. También trabajó como economista en el Ministerio de Finanzas y Planificación Económica en Suazilandia y actualmente es presidente de la Junta Provisional de Cost Internacional. Bienvenido.
Good morning. I thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you this morning. I apologize speaking in English, but I hope nevertheless you'll be able to follow my presentation. Maybe I should give a couple of more minutes. There's some more people who are obtaining sound equipment. Ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure underpins socio-economic development. It is the delivery vehicle for crucial physical assets such as roads, railways, bridges, water supply and sanitation, as well as critical social infrastructure in terms of hospitals and schools. We all know that without reliable and effective infrastructure, economic and human development is hampered. In monetary terms, global construction output is expected to grow to $13 trillion a year by about 2020. Or possibly higher as a result of various new infrastructure initiatives proposed globally by the G20 and the European Union. Studies by Transparency International, the OECD, and the American Society of Civil Engineers have highlighted construction as one of those sectors that is most prone to corruption. They estimate that 10 to 30% of investment in publicly funded construction projects is lost through mismanagement and corruption, meaning that close to $3 trillion annually during the current decade will be lost if current trends are allowed to continue. Besides increasing cost, corruption and mismanagement frequently leads to unsuitable, defective, and dangerous infrastructure that we know can result in the loss of human life. We all know the examples. Substandard classrooms denying children essential education, deficient health facilities preventing the delivery of basic medical care, houses and offices unable to withstand the elements and earthquakes, and roads and bridges leading to nowhere. In nearly all cases, the poor and the disadvantaged bear the brunt of these deficiencies. But corruption in infrastructure is not unique to the developing world. In the last decade, enormous cases of mismanagement and corruption were discovered in developed countries, for example, in a country like Canada. Therefore, fighting corruption in infrastructure is a global challenge, needing a worldwide approach involving both rich and poor nations, donors and aid recipients, international banks and multilateral agencies, international and local contractors, and very importantly, national and international civil society organizations. The main area of focus, however, needs to be at the country level, where decisions about the allocation of public resources are made. We all know that infrastructure needs are enormous, but resources are always tight. Every precaution will need to be taken to ensure that investments in infrastructure generate maximum growth and benefit for all of society. First, there is a need for a strict regulatory and business environment that encourages the efficient and non-corruptive allocation of resources. Of equal importance, I'd like to say, is an environment of transparency and accountability. There should be full disclosure of all public infrastructure projects, availability of and access to relevant project information, only excluding that of a truly sensitive or confidential nature, enables stakeholders to make informed judgments about the relevance, cost, and implementation of proposed infrastructure investment. Transparency leads to accountability and is a strong catalyst, as we know, for reducing corruption. Information made available should cover all stages of the project cycle, from the initial identification and rationale for the project, through project selection, planning, preliminary and final design, and finally, construction itself. Most of the information that is currently made available in countries is centered on the procurement requirements, with information from the implementation phase almost never disclosed. To be sure, procurement reform is very important, in particular in the case of Guatemala, but it is not a sufficient condition for bringing full transparency and accountability to all stages of public infrastructure investment. Complementary measures are needed. The Construction Sector Transparency Initiative, or COST, provides one of the vehicles to achieve such transparency and accountability over the total project cycle. National stakeholders, government, the private sector, contractors, operators, and civil society come together in a collective action arrangement to promote and manage the disclosure of information. This so-called multi-stakeholder approach reinforces the commitment of all parties to achieve greater openness in investment and service delivery. Openness reduces distrust between the parties and ensures that all, including the construction company and the private sector, adhere to the same rules and regulations. All stakeholders benefit from greater accountability. This is not a zero-sum game. For governments, the benefits come in the form of a better use of public resources, improved quality of public services, enhanced reputation and public confidence, and an improvement in public safety resulting from better quality building practices. For the private sector, the greatest benefits are the improvements in the business climate. A level playing field, providing for honest and fair competition, a predictable business environment, creating trust and confidence for investors and entrepreneurs alike, and a reduction in risk. For civil society, greater transparency and accountability provides voice and participation in critical project decisions, better value for money in terms of improved management of public funds, taxation, improved service delivery, and more effective checks and balances, in particular with respect to the detection and the mitigation of corruption. The countries that are implementing this approach have seen some very encouraging results. Greater transparency has resulted in significant cost and time savings through project redesign and, in some cases, the cancellation of excessively expensive, inappropriately designed, or low-quality proposals. More generally, there has been better surveillance of contracts and benchmarking of infrastructure cost. It has been frequently difficult to distinguish very strictly between mismanagement and corruption. However, the bottom line is that better value for money from infrastructure has been achieved in all countries applying this approach. You may know that Guatemala has been a leader in implementing this approach. It was one of the 8 pilot countries, and it has established a formal disclosure requirement that all public infrastructure projects institutionalized through the online platform of Guate Compras. As of March of this year, more than 1,200 projects from 240 procuring entities were disclosed, and another 6,000 projects are expected to be disclosed by the end of this year. Regular reports have been completed. It is fair to say that these are impressive achievements which have generated some significant benefits in terms of savings. You're all aware of the decision to annul the rehabilitation of the Belize Bridge. More broadly, increased scrutiny and accountability has resulted in projects actually being completed on time and within budget, and opportunities for mismanagement and corruption have been curtailed. Moving forward, however, there are a number of concerns that should be addressed if this approach in Guatemala is to achieve its full objectives. First, disclosure requirements should be expanded to include all elements of the cost data standard. At the moment, procuring entities are disclosing, on average, only about 40% of the information they're required to disclose. Also, not all projects are subject to disclosure. Still, too many exceptions are being made without clear justification. Second, all recommendations of the so-called assurance reports should be implemented, or alternatively, clear reasons given why no follow-up action is taken by the respective authority. Third, and perhaps most fundamental to the approach and its ultimate success, is the need for relevant government representatives to engage more fully and actively with representatives of the private sector and civil society. The workings of this multi-stakeholder group will be further strengthened only if there is an inclusive and all-round participation of all members. Indeed, only if there is full trust between the stakeholders and a free and frank review of the disclosed information can we expect this approach to be fully successful in promoting accountability and ultimately reducing corruption. I thank you.